Hello and welcome to this week's edition of World Today. While we were busy discussing US elections and the repercussions, ramifications of the results, a lot took place across the globe. To begin with, there's an almost absolute takeover by China of Hong Kong. Also, major developments on the coronavirus vaccine front and a peace treaty signed between Azerbaijan and Armenia. But will both sides hold up their end of the bargain? In major developments from Hong Kong, pro-democracy legislators have resigned en masse, protesting Chinese administration's new set of constitutional amendments that allow the chief executive of Hong Kong to disqualify any legislator that they feel are anti-China and pro-democracy. This paves the way for pro-democracy leaders to now look for newer paths to fight the entire fight for democracy. Meanwhile, China is now threatening retaliatory action against those countries that have raised their voices criticizing Chinese actions. UK and Australia have heard from Beijing on the 13th of November, warning them of retaliatory action if they continue to criticize the Chinese actions.
Hong Kong opposition legislator Lam Cheok Ting unfurled a banner from a balcony inside the Legislative Council on 12th of November morning before he walked out of the building. The banner read, "Carrie Lam damages Hong Kong and hurts the people. Her name will stink forever." Lam Cheok Ting is one of the 14 other pro-democracy lawmakers who later handed over their resignations en masse in solidarity to the disqualified quartet. Inside the main chamber, President Andrew Leung continued to preside over the Legislative Council with 19 empty chairs.
香港嘅立法會嚟到今日，你就會見到由今日開始係一個全新嘅面貌。民主派再唔會喺議會當中可以係履行到監察政府施政嘅工作。呢一個係特區政府同埋中央政府自己製造嘅一個係破壞憲政咯。
A day before 11th of November, Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam announced disqualification of the 4 pro-democracy legislators. This happened after Beijing passed a resolution that would now allow the local government to remove lawmakers from their positions if they were deemed to threaten the national security of China. The 4 disqualified legislators supported Hong Kong's independence and refused to acknowledge China's sovereignty over the city.
第一點係話香港特別行政區立法會議員因為宣揚或者支持港獨主張，拒絕承認國家對於香港擁有並行使主權，尋求外國或者境外勢力干預香港特別行政區事務，或者具有其他危害國家安全等嘅行為，不符合擁護中華人民共和國香港特別行政區基本法，效忠中華人民共和國香港特別行政區嘅法定要求同埋條件，一經依法認定，即時喪失立法會議員嘅資格。
The Hong Kong Legislative Council now functions with 43 lawmakers, 41 of whom are considered pro-China. Elections for the Legislative Council were scheduled for 6th of September this year before it was postponed for a year due to the coronavirus pandemic. Many candidates were expected to get blocked from taking part in elections. In 2016, Hong Kong authorities introduced the returning officer in its electoral process with veto power against contesting candidates. While pro-democracy leaders have been fighting, Beijing has been strongly pushing for more control and integration of Hong Kong to the rest of China.
6-week-long fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh area has come to a halt. A peace treaty brokered by Turkey and Russia has allowed both the warring neighbors to come to the talking table. But this on-again, off-again conflict between the two countries has not really come to an end, because this is not the first time that the two countries have violated ceasefire agreements. It is merely a pause in the long-standing rivalries and religious and ethnic conflict that have tormented the Caucasus for years.
Armenians packed their belongings and started to leave Nagorno-Karabakh. The fight between Azerbaijan and Armenia continued, with both sides showing no signs of giving up. On the morning of 9th November, Azerbaijan's defense ministry shared footage of the city of Shushi, which it claimed it has captured. Same day, Armenia's Prime Minister announced the end of the fight. In a Facebook post, Nikol Pashinyan said that he has signed an agreement with the presidents of Azerbaijan and Russia to halt the fighting that has been raging since last September. He wrote that the decision was unbelievably painful for him and his people.
Сегодня, 9 ноября, президентом Азербайджанской республики Алиевым, премьер-министром Республики Армения Пашиняном и президентом Российской Федерации подписано заявление, в котором объявляется о полном прекращении огня и всех военных действий в зоне Нагорно-Карабахского конфликта с 0 часов 0 минут по московскому времени 10 ноября 2020 года. Азербайджанская республика и Республика Армения останавливаются на занятых ими позициях.
The agreement signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan with Russia in the presence of Turkey calls for the deployment of nearly 2,000 Russian peacekeepers in the enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenia had to give up control over the corridor that directly connected it to the enclave. This territorial concession didn't go down well with the people. Hundreds of Armenians broke into government buildings in the capital, Yerevan, in protest. They threw furniture and smashed some chairs.
Այսօր նրանք ովքեր ջարդուփշուրներ են անում, նրանք հիմա թիկունքից հարվածում են դիրքերում կանգնող մեր տղաներին։ Իդեպ ուզում եմ ասել, որ այսքան ժամանակ խոսվել է, որ վայ բանակի եւ քաղաքական ղեկավարության միջև արկա, չգիտեմ, այդ հայտնի շրջանակներն են ասել։
Bu beyanat imkan verir ki
The president of Azerbaijan, on the other hand, made a televised address to the nation on Tuesday, describing invincible and its army victorious. People took to the streets of Baku, Azerbaijan's capital, to celebrate the treaty. In the meantime, while Russia's peacekeeping forces and military vehicles arrived in the enclave to ensure the peace treaty is respected, the first footage from Shushi region in Nagorno-Karabakh, which had been at the center of fighting between Armenian and Azeri forces, shows dozens of dead soldiers along the roadside.
Even as it is curtains down for President Trump, he is not leaving without a fight. December 14th is when the Electoral College will vote and cast the November 8th decision of the people in stone. Until then, here is what Trump is up to, and here is what he could face once he leaves the White House and is stripped of presidential immunity.
Good evening. I'd like to provide the American people with an update on our efforts.
While the numbers don't favor the current incumbent in the White House, his crack team of lawyers are trying to make up for it in court.
Many cases are going to be filed, some big, some small. This is going to be eventually a big case because it will go beyond Pennsylvania. But right now, the case is a civil rights case. It'll be filed in federal court. I'm sorry. It'll be filed in federal court. You could file it here or Pittsburgh. That'll be the choice of our lawyer who's looking at it now.
December 14th, the Electoral College would be voting the next president of the United States of America. Given the numbers stacked in favor of a Biden-Harris administration, it is unlikely that Trump would be able to gather enough electors to go against the popular votes of their state.
We are already beginning the transition. We're well underway. And the ability for the administration in any way by failure to recognize this our win does not change the dynamic at all in what we're able to do. And nothing's going to stop that. And so I'm confident that the fact that they're not willing to acknowledge we won at this point is not of much consequence in our planning and what we're able to do between now and January 20th.
And while that is a legal battle, a desperate Trump has been acting out by doing what he does best, firing his staff. One of the key persons to be fired this week was Defense Secretary Esper after contradicting Trump in sending active service troops on the streets of U.S. cities at the height of the Black Lives Matter protests. Esper, along with Secretary Pompeo, had visited India just 2 weeks before he was sacked by Trump through a tweet on Monday. And if that is not all, Trump is staring at huge legal hurdles once he demits office. The presidential immunity is not permanent, and come January 20th, there is much certainty that Donald Trump will become a private citizen and open to legal scrutiny. The past year saw investigations on the alleged hush money Trump paid in 2016 to Stormy Daniels, an adult film star. Investigations on evidence Trump obstructed justice on at least 3 occasions. Investigations of Russian interference in the 2016 elections, civil lawsuits, dozens of them, and the issues stemming from last year's impeachment inquiry, which found that Trump used military aid to squeeze Ukraine for a political favor. Trump Organization could face investigations on tax fraud, including possible insurance and bank fraud. Trump's tax records were subpoenaed, which was fought all the way to the Supreme Court to keep the records a secret.
We're going to be issuing an emergency order.
While Trump has denied wrongdoing on all these cases, routinely dismissing the investigations against him as hoaxes and witch hunts, standing trial for many of the cases is in the realm of possibility.
Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy claimed landslide victory in Myanmar's parliamentary elections to return to power for a second 5-year term. The NLD won 346 seats in the combined lower and upper houses of the legislature, crossing the 322 seats benchmark needed to secure a majority. But the opposition called the election unfair and refused to accept the results. On 12th November, Ethiopia's Nobel Peace Prize winning Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed accused the rulers of the country's Tigray region of seeking to destroy Ethiopia. The brewing civil war between the Ethiopians and the Tigray People's Liberation Front caused scores of civilians being hacked to death, as confirmed by Amnesty International. Abiy claimed that the nation's defense forces had prevented the TPFL from taking control of some military bases and depots from the country's northern command. Veteran peace negotiator and prominent international spokesman for the Palestinians for more than 3 decades, Saeb Erekat died on 10th November. Erekat contracted the coronavirus weeks before his death. His body was brought to the presidential palace in Ramallah for a farewell ceremony attended by Palestinian President and Prime Minister before it was laid to rest in his hometown of Jericho. Bahrain's Prince Khalifa bin Salman Al Khalifa died at the age of 84 on 11th November. He was one of the world's longest-serving prime ministers who led his island nation's government for decades and survived the 2011 Arab Spring protests that demanded his ouster over corruption allegations. Typhoon Vamco ravaged the Philippines' capital city of Manila between 11th and 12th November. Parts of the city were submerged in water, while power poles and trees toppled, damaging homes. The typhoon caused extensive flooding that killed at least 39 people and sent people fleeing to their roofs. Thick mud and debris coated many villages around the Philippine capital in its aftermath.
Welcome back to World Today. Now, the world is waiting for one good news ever since the pandemic broke out early this year, that of a vaccine. Countries, major biotech and pharmaceutical companies are in a race to find the magic drug. But is it near? Is it anywhere near? Pfizer recently announced 90% effectiveness against the COVID virus. But does that mean the magic vaccine is here? Let's find out in this report.
On the 9th of October, Pfizer announced that its COVID-19 vaccine may be a remarkable 90% effective in fighting the pandemic. Based on early and incomplete test results, it brought hope to the world to revive manufacturing, shopping, and normal life.
Big progress comes from small steps. And this is the first small step, the first peek behind the curtain.
Asian stock markets responded with a steady rise for consecutive days with the news of a possible vaccine. Pfizer is developing the vaccine with its German partner BioNTech. They are now on track to apply later this month for emergency use approval from the US Food and Drug Administration.
Stand heute wird es wahrscheinlich so schnell wie noch nie zuvor in der Menschheitsgeschichte einen Impfstoff gegen ein neues Virus geben können. Danach sieht es jedenfalls aus. Wir dürfen optimistisch sein.
The interim analysis from independent data monitors looked at 94 infections recorded so far in a study that has enrolled nearly 44,000 people. Pfizer did not provide any more details about those cases. It cautioned that the initial protection rate might change by the time the study ends.
We would like to get at least 60 days post-second injection, 2 injections to immunize a patient. So a 60-day runtime and at least 6,000 of the volunteers in the study. We need a couple of more weeks to reach that milestone. Then we will have this interim safety readout.
Though authorities keep stressing that it's unlikely for any vaccine to arrive much before the end of the year, and even then initial supplies will be rationed. The European Union has announced that a contract for up to 300 million vaccine doses will soon be concluded with the biotech companies, including Pfizer.
Ergebnis führen. Die angesprochene Menge von mindestens 200 Millionen Dosen für Europäische Union ist jedenfalls gesichert. Sie muss jetzt halt nur noch final auch im Vertrag abgesichert werden.
The most talked about vaccine candidate being developed by Oxford University alongside pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca is still carrying out trials. But the fate of the Chinese vaccine candidate has hit a roadblock. Brazil has stopped clinical trials of the potential coronavirus vaccine CoronaVac being developed by Chinese biopharmaceutical firm Sinovac. It was to be mostly produced by Sao Paulo's state-run Butantan Institute. There is no information as yet whether the stoppage is temporary or permanent.
It is a race, but certainly not a competition, because the idea is to save the human race. Within days of Pfizer announcing 90% effectiveness, Sputnik V, that's the Sputnik vaccine being produced by Russia and India in a joint collaboration, have come out and announced 92% efficacy of the COVID vaccine trials that are taking place in Russia. It is a collaboration that we're looking at between India and Russia to manufacture the drugs in India. We spoke with the RDIF CEO, who said that the vaccine will be provided to major countries across the world, but priority would be given to India. Also, compared to cost of the vaccine that are being produced by other countries, this would be a more cost-effective, reasonably priced vaccine. A lot of them questioning the efficacy, a lot of them asking about the vaccine itself. how do you respond to the fact that despite the skepticism, despite the questions, you are now saying that there is 92% efficacy to the Sputnik V vaccine?
Thank you, Geeta. It's great to be here. And again, we are great partners with India. We will produce this vaccine jointly with India and for the rest of the world. So it's always a pleasure to be here. Well, 92% is basically the data that speaks, not Russia. Obviously, it's a very good efficacy. Anything above 50% is considered to be very good. You know, some flu vaccines are around 30-40% efficacy. So when you talk about efficacy above 90% is very significant. And also this data is confirmed outside of clinical trials, because right now Russian people are being vaccinated in parallel to clinical trials. Our doctors and others are receiving vaccine, and we also see more than 90% efficacy based on 10,000 doctors who've been vaccinated outside of clinical trials. So definitely very positive, good news. And we are hopeful that other data points will also produce positive, good data.
I will come to the study because we need to understand a little more on what this really means for our viewers to understand it a little more in detail, Kirill. But in August, when you registered the vaccine, you said by November, December, we will have it. Are you still confident that it is going to go public soon?
Well, already vaccinations in Russia are happening. So we are vaccinating our doctors. You know, we are producing high volumes of vaccine. So right now people are being vaccinated. We expect to vaccinate, as many as maybe 400,000 people in Russia already this month, and maybe several million or more next month. So Russia is one of the few countries that is already vaccinating people, and we hope obviously to work with India. We're having our clinical trials there. The vaccine is already delivered to India for clinical trials. So as soon as the regulator approves the vaccine for India, we can start vaccinating people in India as well, and also have this vaccine distributed to other countries that is produced in India.
If and when those shots are manufactured in India, will India get the first users benefit or rights, first movers and manufacturing advantage of giving it to Indians first before even thinking of exporting it? Or are we looking at manufacturing in India and exporting it abroad? Because that certainly could be a concern.
Well, Geeta, I think it very much depends on the speed of the regulator and how fast we receive regulatory approval. As soon as we receive regulatory approval in India, of course, we'll be supplying Indian market as a priority. But if it takes a longer time to receive regulatory approval in India, initially we'll supply some other markets. So it's more of a question to Indian regulators how fast they will process data from Russia. And we had a great agreement with the Indian regulators that they will really use Russian data as a basis for many of the decisions they're going to make. But of course, as soon as the approval is going to be made, big part of capacity produced in India will go to India first.
Oh, so you're saying that the manufacturing will happen and will take place. If the regulators approve, then it goes to Indians. If the regulators don't approve, then the manufactured goods will go abroad. Have I understood you correctly?
Yes, that's correct. With the exception of, we hope for an approval from Indian regulator. So basically, we believe that we'll receive approval and then it will be going to India and to abroad in some proportions that we are discussing with the Indian government right now.
On that note, many thanks for joining us here in India Today. That's Kirill Dmitriev, the CEO of RDIF, speaking exclusively to India Today. That's all in this edition of World Today. It is festive season, Diwali being celebrated across the world, including India, as also now the world preparing for Christmas. Let's take you to New York, where the Rockefeller Center is now looking all sprightly and bright with the beautiful Christmas tree all decorated and prepared to welcome Christmas. Take a look. Goodbye and take care.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.